Hey there, here's a quick demo video on how to integrate Splunk with Cyberchef. If you want to follow along or actually do this integration yourself in your own environment, just come out here to github.com/Dave Harold, that's me, /TA-Cyberchef. So there's the URL. Um, First of all, so I work for Splunk, and one of the cool things that you can do in Splunk is you can integrate it pretty easily with other tools that are valuable. I work in cybersecurity, so I've come across this tool called Cyberchef. It's probably not news to most of you. It's amazing. Okay, it's created by GCHQ over in the UK. And they've released it actually for public use under the Apache 2 license, and it's covered by their Crown copyright. So definitely check out Cyberchef, definitely check out their licensing and make sure that it's compatible with what you're trying to do. I think it's just extremely valuable and just something that probably has a home in just about every single SOC and security operations or security analytics type of environment. Okay, so let's show you what we want to do here and how it actually works so that you can understand what we're working toward here. So first of all, just going to fix up this search a little bit. So I run a Splunk search, okay? It might be a funny looking Splunk search to some of you. All I'm doing here is saying, hey, give me any event. In this case, I'm pulling it out of my internal my internal index, and I'm just taking the first one, right? So that's what this head one command does, is saying take all the events but only show me the first one, and then I'm adding a field to it. Okay, now when you do this in your environment, you're not going to add a field to do this. You're going to apply these workflow actions to a field that's already in your data. But for demonstration purposes, I'm just doing it up here so it's easy for me to talk about. So I'm using this eval command. I'm saying add a new field to this event called CChef and give it a value of ABC123. And then I do a little bit of plumbing here with another eval command. I duplicate that CChef field into something called CChef underscore base64. And then I say base64, which is going to create a base64 encoding of that field CChef B64. Okay. If I come down here and look at this event, remember I only have one because I use that head command. I can find that CChef field here. CChef, its value is ABC123, and I have this actions menu here. And if I click actions, I can actually, because of this integration, I can do a whole bunch of things in Cyberchef to ABC123. Let's say, for example, I wanted to convert it to hex. So I click this Cyberchef to hex workflow action. That's going to open up a new tab in my browser, and it's going to do a few things. One is it's going to load a particular recipe in Cyberchef here. It's going to set the input to ABC123, which was our value from Splunk, and it's going to show us the output, which is what we're after, right? Now, this is the first time we've looked at Cyberchef, but you can choose literally dozens, if not hundreds, of different recipes over here on the left to do super cool things. I mean, converting to hex is one thing, right? But maybe we say, oh, we actually want to uppercase that first. So we can grab this to uppercase recipe, and we can drop it in above our to hex recipe, right? Or let's say, okay, then when we're done with that, we want to take an MD5 hash of that or something. We can grab the MD5 recipe. Now we can step through these things, recipe by recipe, if you will, or a sub recipe, if you will, and see the values of these things as we step through. You can save a recipe. You can save the results of running the recipe to a file. You can copy this output to your clipboard. You can switch the input and the output and do all sorts of cool things like that. Cyberchef is just super valuable. I mean, you can do things that you wouldn't imagine in here. You can do Shannon entropy calculation. You can do You can disassemble an executable inside Cyberchef. You can see up here, it's shown on the top. Super, super cool. Lots of neat stuff. And you can contribute to Cyberchef as well. They solicit contributions on their GitHub page. So let's talk about how this works a little bit. So when I clicked that workflow action inside Splunk, um, really what it did is it just popped a new browser window and it set the location to gchq.github.io. This is a demo instance of Cyberchef that is operated by the GCHQ folks. And it's perfect for demonstrations like this. It's probably not perfect for your production instance, okay? So set up your own Cyberchef. But in this case, we're hitting the demo instance that they have set up. And then you can see there's this hashtag recipe equals, okay? And this is where we start putting our recipes in here, like 2 uppercase. And then after that, I do a 2 hex. And then after that, I do an MD5, right? And then ultimately, I need to send some input to it. And I do that right here with this ampersand input equals, YWJJM, whatever. This is actually a base 64 encoded version of ABC123. So if we go back to Splunk, we look at that a little bit. The way that we implement this, right, is if you go to, from a GUI perspective, from the graphical user interface, if you go to settings and go to fields and go to workflow actions, and it says we don't have any, but if I say show me the workflow actions from all of my apps, right? You see here, here's all of our Cyberchef workflow actions. So I'll show you the from hex one, for example. So we have a label. We tell it what field to apply to. In this case, we're applying it to that little made-up field that I called Cyberchef. But this is where you would substitute in your fields that are important in your data, right? That you want to apply the from hex from. So might be any number of fields. You can specify multiple fields by separating them with a comma. You can also apply them to event types if you use event types in Splunk. And you can show the action in the field menu, which is what we did, or in the event menu, so it's there as well, or both. And I usually just leave it as both, but you can make that decision yourself. The action type is a link, right? It's a link to a Cyberchef instance, not another search inside Splunk, so we leave that as link. And then down here is where all the action really happens, right? The URI. So we set this to gchq.github.io. That's that demo instance. And then we use the recipe from hex. I just copied this out of Cyberchef. Right? I did what I wanted to do and observe the URI and copied that out. And then here's the interesting part where I say input equals cchef underscore B64. So this is going to grab that base 64 encoded version of the field in question. And that's what Cyberchef expects, is base 64 encoded. So we have to encode it inside Splunk before we send it. Okay, it's going to pop it in a new window, and it's going to use the get HTTP method. So it's easy to modify these if you want. You can also clone them. There's a clone here. And these are also defined. If I cd in the file system into TA Cyberchef, if I go into default, there's this file called workflowactions.conf, sublime workflowactions.conf, and this is actually the definition of all those workflow actions. So if you're going to add a whole bunch of them, it might be a lot easier to just do that in the config file itself. You'll want to put it under local, not under default. So I see I'm here under default. You'd want to put your changes in a directory called local. If it's not there, you can create it. And that's so that when you install a new version of this app, the default doesn't, your changes in default don't get overwritten. Okay, so let's see if we've missed anything. I showed you how to test using this search. If you want to test some of the other recipes, something other than A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4 is in order. So I've given you some examples here that will help test some of those other Cyberchef recipes. You'll notice that this TA only has about 10 or so recipes in it, but Cyberchef has, again, dozens or hundreds. So you may want to add additional workflow actions for additional recipes. Um, if you want to apply the workflow actions to different fields, I just showed you how to do that in the GUI. But essentially, the important part there is to make a base 64 version of the field in question and use that in your workflow action. Okay. And if you want to use your own Cyberchef instance, set it up and update the workflow action to point to that custom Cyberchef instance. So I'd love to hear if you have problems, questions, or success stories. Probably the best thing to do is just write out here in GitHub. Just use the issues, or I'm pretty easy to find online as well. Thank you, and good luck with the integration.